there's a number of Garys here sitting beside me. One is, please, if you get a chance, go to the National Museum, Collins Barracks, and see their youth culture exhibition that was curated by Garry. But there's also, Garry, what the hell are you working on now? And then there's, Garry, what gigs were you going to? Like, where did you get into music? Or like, were your family, I know you had sisters, I know you know their brother. Like, where did music become something that was really important to you?
I was the youngest of 8, so I was like the kind of a cultural sponge in the family, and there was always music. My grandfather worked for Carnegie, and my mum and her sister learned to play music when they were younger. My dad was mad into music. He would have been like Johnny Cash, Ray Charles, Gene Vincent. My mum would have been like Donald Pierce and other more kind of manageable things for herself. And then all my brothers and sisters were into everything. So it went from a very early age, I'd see those records, and that's, I suppose the visual thing is what drew me in, was LP sleeves and hearing this stuff constantly played when mum and dad are at the house. Beatles, the Stones, the Kinks, the Who. And then that went from there. Then there's always like, I can visually see that the lines in life where music kind of dips in and out. Neil Young, one of the sisters got big into Neil Young, glam rock, all the brothers and sisters, Sweet, T-Rex, Bowie, Roxy music. And again, that was massively visual. If you're watching as a kid in 73 or 4, I would have been 5, 6, and the whole glam, visuality of glam on television, on Top of Pops or Supersonic, I think was a great program. It was like, just brilliant. Music just seeped into the veins, I think. It was probably why I ended up being such a music fan and listening to so many different genres and being into so many different genres of music. And then obviously, glam rock happened. Then sisters got into basic rollers, and then the brothers got into punk rock, then new wave, post-punk, two-tone, indie bands, hip-hop and rap, reggae. And I hung around with a large enough gang of friends, and now of that, maybe as you get older, maybe 4 became hardcore music fans, and it went from the usual Saturday afternoon going to the record shops and buying whatever records you can get your hands on, to going to gigs. And you'd learn through the older brothers, like, we weren't old enough to, still in school, so you couldn't buy, unless you went to the Dandelion and paid 50 pence, and by the time we were like 15 and 16, and you know, just maybe 1 or 2 people had left school and they were working in jobs. So you always tried to bunk into gigs, get in for nothing. And I always remember the brothers would come back with these stories, like Niall was saying, you know, I remember my brother next to me, Gabriel, coming back from seeing Taxis Midnight Runners in the Mansion House. And I think he was like, at the time, he was probably 16, and he was waving something around, which I thought was a football program, but it was a program they did for the night. And I had all these portrait headshots of Taxis Midnight Runners, and I think the Black Arrows were meant to be the support band. And I was fascinated by it, and it just, he threw it there and went into my drawer like everything else. Like when the brothers and sisters move on, they brought anything back, a book, a poster, into the drawer. And of course the drawer became the bedroom, became an archive of whatever. So you learned how to bunk into gigs. And I remember my brother coming back one day, they were punks in 77, and they used to say, I'd go up to the stadium, and we didn't live too far from the stadium. It was a hang out at the stadium, and you'd ask to come over, could you get in? It was usually MCD gigs down in Stesman. Or you'd see people trying to climb over the wall. You can never really get in and climb over the wall. There's a whole process in the stadium. You go through the door with your ticket, and then you go through the narrow walkway up the steps, and you're greeted by another security with looking at your ticket and showing you to a seat. So it didn't matter if they go over the wall. So it was best to try and ask to come over or somehow see what happens. But the elder brother had told me they were standing outside a gig in, I think it was October 77, and Meet DeVille was playing in the stadium. And they were usually you'd hang around right till the end, and then if you couldn't get in, you went home. But they were standing outside in their punk gear, and apparently Meet the Real pulled up in a car, the promoter, and strolled up and kind of looked him up and down in his salmon pink three-piece suit and went, "Cat's not going to the gig." And he went, "We're not tickets, man." He goes, "These cats are coming in with me." You know, little things like that, you'll be telling you, and I go, "Oh man, that's great. What was the gig like?" So going to gigs was just, it was part and parcel of going to gigs and buying records and listening to music. And then that, I think, being a mad music fan, it changes that relationship. I suppose it's what happening as well in relation to going to gigs. I think by '86 we kind of more or less stopped listening to kind of guitar-based bands. You had punk and new wave and indie bands and all that. And the group of us got into soul for like 8-9 months, and soul records, you could go a rabbit hole for like decades looking for that stuff. And the UK and America is the place to go if you really want to find that stuff. Usually it was compilation albums you find here. And then we went from soul to jazz and reggae, and you know, as the years rolled on in the late 80s, I remember I stopped listening to a lot of reggae. I didn't like the harsher, the digital sound that was being produced at the time. And by '88 we went down this magical blues rabbit hole, and we spent the whole of '88 going to local blues gigs, which you could do. It was great. You go to Slattery's, you go to Madigan's, you go to J.J. Smith's, obviously, and you see lots and lots of local blues. It was a great local blues scene. Now we'd been to, because we perfected our way of getting into the stadium over the years, which is usually a wait for someone coming out and ask for their tickets to them, and the guys on the door would let us in once we had that, so we wouldn't get grief off your man up on the stairs when we went in. Because the two lads on the doors, they worked for the Boxing Association. It was their venue, and we knew them from going to the boxing where our mates who boxed for the North Avenue and the like. But we went down this blues rabbit hole, and we'd seen B.B. King and Buddy Guy, I think, and Johnny Hooker in the stadium. And of all places, the Wexford Inn, it was an amazing old trad folk pub on Wexford Street, where Whelan's is now. It became Whelan's, I think, or the Village maybe.
Yeah, okay.
And someone had put on this amazing run of blues gigs by these equally important and interesting old dudes like Louisiana Red and Lazy Lester and Carrie Bell and Mary Stokes Band always played support. Fabulous. Got to that, and we were stuck in that blues groove for like nearly a year. And I always remember, because it was a trad and blues venue, and they did a lot of Republican fundraising nights in there. You always, no matter what was on, you always had the Garda Special Branch car sitting across the road, taking names or photographs and that. You know, you're always weary of that. But that was '88, and then something changed in '89. I remember thinking, I haven't been listening. We've gone down all that like soul, jazz, blues. Haven't listened or gone to local gigs, rock band, indie punk or stuff for a while. It felt like that anyway. And I bought the Stone Roses debut album, and I remember thinking, oh, this is deadly and it's groovy and funky, and I was like, it got me back into it. I was like, there's a bit of the Boards in there, there's a bit of Big Star, this bit of like indie jangly Wickenbacker guitar stuff. And I got really back into listening to guitar bands, and in which it just happened at the end of '89. I think Smiley Budger opened the New Inn, which probably only lasted just over a year. And my brother was doing a bit of work from there, so I had easy access to every night, and you'd go in and see literally 5 nights a week, and you could see the Subterraneans going hard, Scared Stiff, Johnny Thunders, that Petrol Motion played a fabulous gig in it once. And that became the norm then. The New Inn, the Fox and Pheasant, which was starting to put on their Skinhead, Sharp organisations, gigs, and the Attic and the White Horse. So there's like a little trilogy of venues that we go to. But as '89 went into '90, there was a seismic happening across the Irish Sea with this new cultural youth movement that was probably the best thing that happened since punk rock. Certainly had the same ideas, clothing, drugs, music. It became fully formed Acid House in 1989 in the Then by 90, it started into the Irish scene. Again, we'd stopped going to, well, not fully stopped going to gigs, but suddenly now we were going to little clubs that were playing dance music, and people were DJing, and then there was obviously bigger raves and that kind of thing. But you'd end up going to a mate's house and sitting there for 3 hours and watching them learn how to mix and become the bedroom DJ. The whole DIY aesthetic around the dance scene was exactly what happened in the punk scene. And then I guess from that was people were learning to use mixers and buy samplers, and you had the whole bedroom producer kind of thing, people making music in their bedroom. So that was clubbing for a while, and then around 82, the superstar DJ, the commerciality of the dance scene kind of, you know, if you're into the whole punk thing and all that, you go, oh, it's too commercial now, I'm not going there anymore, it's too big and too popular and that, and you go back again to seeing, you know, bands like Niall's band playing in Charlie's, I think, was an emerging venue then on Angel Street. But yeah, it's just a continuous cycle if you love music, as much music as you do, because I could never suffer that thing, like, I don't know if you mentioned it earlier, Michael, you know, you used to get slagged off in your teenage years, but you can't listen to that shit. What are you doing? What you buy that record for? I never felt that, and I never had those guilty pleasures, because the first thing that I ever loved as a kid in music was pop music. Was wherever got all the cool genres and whatever, you know, Dave Essex, Top of the Pops, or the first, I think the first single I bought, I very distinctly remember, was On the Way Up to the Graveyard in Manchurone, to visit my brother's grave. I came down with my two sisters, and there's a magazine shop on Harold's Cross Bridge called Pete's Palace. And I used to go in all the time on the way back from Graveyard, and they'd ask me what magazine did I want. They sold second-hand magazines, and I always opted for the girls' magazine, like Jackie or Diana, because they were big format, and you got the big colour poster in the middle. And I remember, I think I was getting one with David Essex or a Bowie poster or something, and then one of my sisters says, "Do you want to get a record instead?" And there was second-hand singles on the counter, and I went, "Oh, well, I've never bought a record or had my own, because I didn't need to, because all the brothers and sisters had one." Flicked through, and the first record I ever bought, or got bought for me, was similar to Mick, but not quite, was the Glitter band, Angel Face.
And I'm stopping you right there. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you to the High Tone panel, you know, and thanks for everything you do with curating our culture and presenting it in such an engaging way. So thanks to Niall and to Garry.